I'm a professional editor and I've always wanted to expand my horizons by talking to other editors and sound designers, music composers, visual effects supervisors, essentially all the magicians who silently and invisibly work behind the scenes. This series is an attempt to make the invisible artists visible. I hope you enjoy the conversations.
Okay, so in today's episode, we'll be discussing Delhi Crime Season 2, the edit of Delhi Crime Season 2 specifically, because I figured everyone's talking about Delhi Crime Season 2. So I think I should as well. And everyone's talking about the fun stuff. I think we can talk about the not so fun stuff, which is what I think something that largely the director and editors are usually privy to. So I want to start with Tanuj and actually Manas Parikshit, if you guys want to kind of jump in at any point. So Delhi crime is a crime as a genre. It's categorized as crime, thriller, police procedural, drama. What when you were working on it, what was the way you were perceiving it as a genre? Or which genre were you kind of aligning with more?
That's a good question. And first of all, thank you for having us all. Antara, thank you for doing this podcast. I think the editor's work is invaluable, important, some of the most important work on the show. And this is an important space, I think, to convey how these things are made. I think a lot of it, for me at least, was trying to understand the show that was made, and finding my own emotional entry point into defining it for myself. I think when I first got, crime is always at the heart of it. It's Delhi crime. But I think my first entry point was learning about the show, understanding the show as a procedural, as something where the cops have to go from clue to clue to clue to clue to clue to find the killers or whoever. What's the clue-based procedural mystery that goes into it. So, aligning the narrative around that and learning the show that way was important for me because I always felt I understood character and drama and that kind of part of it a little bit more intuitively. But as the show went and grew and we worked on it, to me, what became the most important pieces was the drama and specifically the human drama, and specifically how our actors are performing the drama, both on how the crime is affecting them and how their lives are affecting them. And I think that's the heart of the show. That's where I've arrived at with it. The procedural and the narrative is always, it feels mutable, tangible. We can keep working on those pieces. But the drama is like the magic, is the mystery. It's what makes you lean into the show. So that for me is where I arrived with it. And I think that's where I hope we keep mining that part of the show is the emotional, is the conflicts and the personal discord people have,
My thoughts are also kind of aligned with what Tanuj is. What attracted us to Delhi Crime, I think, is the crime drama part, right? And the personal stories of these cops and even the antagonists in in the show. But so for me at least, because I did episode 2 and 4, I felt that 4 had a lot more crime thriller sort of beats, which it had that kind of pace and that energy which needed to kind of just go. They're finally like the action kind of begins once Vatika does the press conference and they're on. And so that was a slightly different beast to handle. Episode 2 had this drama of discrimination, had the drama of bigotry, and how the cops were reacting to the pressures that they were under. So I kind of enjoyed both aspects of it, and I could explore both aspects of it even while editing. So the pacing of it was slightly different, obviously, of episode 2 and episode 4 because the beats were different, right? And I mean that way, credit to how it was shot and written, that the flow between the drama and the thrill always seemed seamless. And also to the edit, I guess, it seemed seamless and it was thoroughly enjoyable how it moved from drama to thrill. And that was obviously, that took a lot of iterations and a lot of discussions to kind of crack. But it was, the whole process was enjoyable because we knew we were kind of doing this balancing act, and that the show was somewhere in between the thrill and the drama.
So I think I've said this before, is that when I entered this exercise, I was coming in with a stronger sense of drama on the edit table, and not so much of or I should say, a limited understanding of how to edit crime. Um, so for me, I was always looking to find those spaces where I can extract emotions more, and sort of indulge myself into how do these characters become closer to us and more relatable to us. What if I take a leaf from what Parikshit said, that what attracts me to Delhi crime in general is how close to home it is in general. Being someone growing up in Delhi, the understanding of this world was very special, and how this universe was created at the very outset was also something very special. Nobody had attempted it like this, especially a Delhi police drama on the silver screen like this before. So that itself was very attractive and challenging at the same time. Getting into the world of Vartika, Niti, Bhupinder, and all these characters was very, very exciting for me. And I think, I don't know, I still don't know, was it by design or by chance that my episode 3 uh, was always, in the first iteration and the second iteration, was always, you know, a pure drama piece. And it had very less to do with the crime aspect of things. So for the longest time, we were struggling to, not put it together, but sort of understand how this fits in the larger scheme. And I always had a smile on my face, because I was like, this is what it is. This is what I enjoy the most. Things are not going anywhere. Plot is not moving.
It was a little bit serendipitous, right? How the episodes fell as per your styles. One thing, obviously, three are very different editors and very different people. Yet there's a seamlessness to how the episodes feel, but yet the writing on each episode really leaned into your strengths. And I think Antara was our opener. I needed somebody, just one person, to focus on the opening and just emotionally hooking you into the show. And that's Antara's, one of her best skills is just hooking you with that, with the emotion and the pacing and the story and the crime, and Parikshit's, this modulation he's speaking about of action beats, along with propulsion, along with dramatic beats. This kind of interplay. I mean, that was 2 and 4, like right up your alley in that regard. And I'm not saying you guys don't do other things, but in Manas, your episodes were like how you're describing it. The drama is your entry point. They always came in very full and pregnant with feeling and drama. Yes. And long, and you had to learn how to enter some of the more pacing and activity through it by process of removal, and I think that alignment was somewhat.
Yeah, I've also often thought about that. I mean, I'm very fortuitous, at least in my case. I won't exchange my episodes for anybody. Like I would again, given the choice, I would do 2 and 4. I wouldn't do anything else.
Antara, what's your answer to the question? You asked this question. I'm curious what you think.
Oh, always human drama, always. I think that was definitely what kind of was at the core of the series for me. And I think the thriller and the crime stems from that, from the drama, from the human drama, and from human circumstances. But yeah, the core of it always human drama. I also wanted to ask you, Tanuj, that so as we said that I think the first 3 episodes were kind of more about the drama, and the subsequent 4th and 5th are more leaning into the thriller zone. Was that always the intention, or is that how it ended up being once you shot and edited?
I think I think organically it fell that way. And I think it's just sort of the demands of a show like this, especially a show that's rooted in a hunt or a chase. At some point, you have to pick things up towards the end, especially the last couple episodes. So intuitively, you have basic fun ideas of storytelling. Crime, hook you with the emotion. something dramatically that hooks you, and then third piece is the thrill of it. That order just made sense for this story. I can't say that I can say that now after looking at everything. I can't say I had that very clear in my head, but I think the show is about a misguided roundup of the wrong criminals, and that comes with a lot of introspection. But when they find the right criminals, that comes with a lot of direction, and a lot of a lot more velocity. So it's logical that this is how it's structured, and that this is something that that tonal shift of finding the real killers and then jumping into their perspective, which is a very bold choice for a show. I always felt it would work. I always knew it would work strictly because of the caliber of actors that we had, that we were switching to. But it was a question. It was a risk. It was a choice. Like, do we go that route or not? And it's an alchemy of having a strong idea, committing to it, but then making it work in the edit. And how do you switch gears, and what do you keep and what do you remove to make that a seamless transition? So I think that transition is actually the more is the bigger question than the structure,
Yeah, and I feel, just adding to that, is that I feel that the latter half of episode 3, where you're seeped into her dilemma about should she throw them under the bus or not. You're really seeped into it, and the pacing of that is so wonderfully done that when that press conference happens, it's so electric. It kind of jumpstarts episode 4.
Yeah, I just
episode 4 doesn't work.
That.
Yeah, so episode 4 wouldn't work if you had not invested in the dilemma and the press conference and her taking a stand, which of course, the way that flowed into 4 makes 4 and 5 work, I feel.
But and conversely, I'd also say the opposite too, which is that we got to a very beautiful place in 3, and you can't stay there either. The show has to evolve from that point. Either you're not going to be interested in seeing 3 happen again and again, 2 times.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I feel sometimes, I don't feel like it happens every time, but I felt this very strongly with the DC2 rushes, that the rushes, something about them for me personally was very overwhelming. And after a point, they kind of dictated how you had to cut. Instead of sometimes it's the other way around, where the editor kind of takes those calls consciously. I felt for me in the first episode, especially, Tanuj, I think you're also probably leaning into that zone, but I think it was a lot of instinct. I don't think there were probably 2 or 3 points, I think, which we really discussed and argued or whatever, but I think the rest of it was pretty much instinctive, and really the footage was dictating the cut points for me. Parikshit and Manas, what was your experience when you kind of viewed the footage, and how would you say you approached the edit of it?
Episode 2 first.
So it took a little time to adjust, I think, because it had a very unique language. I think the way it was shot right from the outset, I feel, what Tanuj and David did is really remarkable. I think it had an identity. The visuals had an identity. So it took a little bit to kind of get to understand that tone. And I think right from the beginning, even earliest discussion before even shoot was started, Tanuj knew that they were going to do these single one-ers and trying to kind of design stuff which kind of took in the atmosphere, took in the locations. So I was kind of prepared for it. So it took a little time, but I didn't feel overwhelmed. I just felt, after a point I started enjoying it so much that because of this way of looking at this world, I think there was an opportunity for us also to linger on, to make choices which are not, which one usually would not make, like to stay on the back of somebody while they are walking,
absolutely,
while they are thinking, while just to linger on a close for that extra beat longer, to linger even on B-roll shots for that extra beat longer. That all stems from the way it was conceived and shot and lit, and it was so beautifully lit. I mean, David's work is outstanding. I think the visuals really spoke to me, and I felt inspired just looking at the visuals a lot of times. So I never felt overwhelmed as such, but it did take a little bit of. I mean, it just takes some rewiring, retuning for Delhi Crime, which is good, I guess. I mean, it has, because the language then stands out for the show. I don't know if I answered the question. I don't know.
No, I mean, I was always excited seeing your edits, Parikshit, because I felt like I always kept a lot of options. You could cut it a lot of different ways, and how you interpreted the footage too was always exciting for me, because I never felt like it, there were things I had in my mind. There were definitely shots and beats that I had to hit, but when you're in the hands of a good editor, it's so exciting to see how it comes back, and as long as some part of your design comes back in a form that you like, and quite often it's you're showing me things about the shoot that elevate what I was thinking, and so that is that's how I like to shoot, at least, is to give as many whether you enter the scene from a close-up or whether you enter it from a wide, I want to give you all options that work, and hopefully you find your language through that process, of. And let's go to mine. I can go on and on.
I found the material very enabling, I have to say. It sort of lent itself to my natural style of editing drama in general. I am very fond of runners. I am very fond of the idea of less is more, even on the level of cutting a particular scene. I love lingering, sometimes almost on the verge of testing the patience of my directors, my audience as well. But and with performers like Shefali and Rasika et al, they really enabled that. Of course, David just has this just pure natural talent of knowing when to hold and when to move. He's just so gifted that way, I feel. And I think by design, Tanuj and David both sort of at the outset decided not to put things on a put the camera on a tripod and keep it fluid. So that sort of took away the burden from me of keeping things moving all the time. I could be in the moment, I could stay in the moment, and I didn't necessarily feel a need to cut. Along with that, we also, I think, we also had to look at the larger picture of the episode per se and the show per se. Even though we were editing in isolation of us three, I felt that on an episodic level, one had to have a sort of serious understanding of sense of movement of the story at large. Which is why even in the first question, I was saying that I love making people uncomfortable in my cinema. So episode 3 was just doing that. And of course, we went through a bunch of iterations, but I have to give credit to Tanuj for giving us, me, and I can speak for the two of you also, that giving us so much freedom on the edit. I was never, I think, never did he tell me to cut a certain sequence a certain way, which I almost never experienced. So it was really, really, really enabling.
Mm. Oh, I love that you make things uncomfortable, by the way. And I don't know if that makes me comfortable with uncomfortableness, or maybe you didn't make me uncomfortable. But it's I think your Manas, your choices and what you hold on are always such a great starting point. It's easy to squeeze things in, but to see these performances play out in their fullness helps you understand the nature of the episode and the content of the episode, the heart of the episode. I think you always have, and especially for a director, I'm not even thinking of trimming it the first times I see it either. I just want to feel all the things you're feeling in your edits, and it's a very unique, and it went with the material you had too, but it's a very special approach.
Yeah, I feel in a lot of ways the choices that have been made directorially by the DOP, by the editors, and of course by actors in general, a lot of the choices have been really brave. And I think that is what sticks with an audience ultimately. I wanted, Tanuj, speaking of brave choices, I want to go back to episode 1 and talk about the introductory scene till the cold open. I think that is something we kind of spent a lot in episode 1. I think that's what we spent the most time on, right? And I think there were so many ways of cutting that, and we spoke about that frequently. There are so many ways of cutting, and we had to choose one POV. Do you want to just talk a little more
Yeah.
about the?
Well, one is a special story in itself. Like one is its own epic saga of how it came together. The beauty of one is that the first draft that came in actually was so together. It was 90% there. And then the things that we had to change were about removal, about pacing, about how many times are we hitting beats. It just got sharper as we did passes on it. But the big thing with a show and Netflix and any, you have to get them in the opening. You have to make sure you have them for the first 5 minutes. The biggest thing you fear is that switch off button. You switch off the show, you're not going to come back to it. So Antara and I, we're fighting that energy 100. Like that was at the heart of every choice we made. It's like, are they going to turn it off? Are they hooked? Are they hooked? And it was literally, and it's not like you can say, oh, give it 10 minutes. No, you have 5 seconds, then you have 12 seconds, and you have 20 seconds, 30 seconds. We're talking very little time scale, And that opening was interesting because we at one point had shot it in a way where we were actually in with the conversation and in with the old folks speaking, and it just wasn't dynamic enough, dramatic enough. There wasn't enough perspective on it. It just was kind of dead on arrival. And then when we sort of conceived a little bit more of it and shot this piece through the windows with the rain falling and kind of giving a criminal's perspective of it to show their how unsafe these people, how unsafe we all are in our homes potentially. Then we had an idea there. It got kind of exciting. And I remember at one point Antara had found this beautiful footage of a bus going through the rain at one point, and we had attempted to kind of start with this beautiful classic Hindi song and this imagery of the rain, and it kind of evoked season 1, as a hook. And it was actually a very beautiful opening, but I felt we had a long heart to heart. I just felt we can't bring up season 1 to start season 2. Otherwise, we're already putting ourselves in that shadow. And why evoke that crime? We have to win on our crime itself. So we finally, we got back to what I had designed, which was the these shots of the security cameras looking at you, security camera. These like graphic compositions that actually we did have a few, the secret in the show, we did have a few tripod shots. And these compositions were actually, they were also referenced to season 1 because there's a very beautiful montage, and I think episode 2 or 3 of just security cameras going around the city. So if you look closely at the season, there's a lot of little, shout outs to season 1 or references that we pulled, the coffee cup stirring. There's thoughts, So once we had that kind of tone set of this camera looks like Wall-E, basically looking right back at the audience. It's like putting a gun right in the audience's face, and you kind of forced to sit up straight. And we had this sequence. They kind of the oldies went to bed, and then you started seeing the house being chased, and you jumped into the perspective of the security cameras. And we had shot the guys in the house as well, but we wanted to stick with the security camera to keep that scariness. And that was sort of the opening, and we'd submitted it, and the big note we got was we just need a little bit more punch. We need something else to kind of bring it home, which is when we mined the footage, and we had a long talk, and we found I shot these kind of flashback sequences of Karishma as a suggestion with Antara made, very early on in the shoot, and I remember that suggestion. I was like, if Antara wants this, I'm going to get it. So I went out and got all these magical memory moments, and one of them included that whack of Karishma, kind of that closing whack that opens, that goes into the credits, and it wasn't designed for that at all, but it was something that just totally made sense to give us a punch that makes you, kind of sit up and go into the credit sequence. And once we put that in, we weren't even sure, right? Like we put it in, we were like, is this too much? Is it too little? Is this solving the note? And I just think that it just, after a while sitting with it and getting out of your stubborn mind, it became awesome. I was like, this is an awesome, for what we have. This is like for what we need to do with an opening. This makes you sit up and think, and on future watches, that when, you realize if you watch it again, like, okay, maybe that's charisma. It changes how you maybe look at the season if you watch it a second time. So we talked about that too, is like the second watchability of it.
There was actually I think the most resistant I've been to any of Tanuj's suggestions is that Wally shot. I could not. I was telling Tanuj this on the day of the screening that I could not wrap my head around starting on that and just staying on it. And then of course you watch it and I totally understood what he meant and it works. But I think I think I just argued a lot on that one point. I was like, why are we doing this? And then I think I understood, and then we played a lot more with how the CCTV cameras, almost if you stay long enough on them, you start seeing faces in the cameras. So that, I think that is something we ended up having a lot of fun with.
But Antara, can I ask, what was your process of navigating the opening? Like, when you have something that is shot with a different sort of flow in mind, how do you start breaking that down and making it something completely different? Right? How do you begin that as an editor?
I think just purely on instinct and driven by anxiety. I think that's my go-to. I think because, and which is why I feel like I was very overwhelmed with one, because it's such a big responsibility that if that falls flat, then it's just
nobody sees the rest of your work.
Nobody sees the rest. Yeah. So as I said, driven by anxiety and instinct, I think that was. But yeah, as Tanuj said, I did try one, one interpretation where we had that vehicle going through, and we were trying to establish the gang's POV through and through.
Right.
But I think it was also, Tanuj, probably too lyrical.
Maybe so.
Begin, I think so. I understand. I was really in favor of that because it was kind of, I felt it could have been a subversion. But yeah, so I think once we got the cameras in and we also made a choice of just staying outside the house.
That
helped.
How do you come to that choice? How do you arrive at that choice?
After a lot of emails with Tanuj.
Okay.
We spoke, I think on that intro, we have, I don't know how many mails, how many phone calls, messages, and we are exchanging, links and references of, what we like and what is going to spark fear is, I think, what was critical. And
I'll also jump in and say also with this piece, it's also, about what you can achieve. I don't think we didn't have the resources and time to land a scene inside the way it should be done. So it's also about your limitations. Like yes, that might be a beautiful idea to be inside, but for whatever reason, we were way too limited to land it. So we were also kind of pushed out of the house.
I think, but because I remember you were still on shoot. And I had cut that, or at least seen a lineup of that first section. And I had this, again, a message exchange with Tanuj saying, let's not get into the house. I think, and he's like, yeah, absolutely, I agree. Just let's stay out. And that really helps in establishing POV.
Perspective,
right. So that and I think the fear is a lot more because you don't know what's going to happen. You just see shadows and you hear some laughter, you hear music, even the music, I think that song, the ghazal that's playing. So at one point we didn't know if we were going to get that ghazal. And Tanuj, eventually when I watched the series finally, I was so glad that it's still there. But that was something I know Tanuj really
they're
fought
still
for.
mad at me for. I still get made fun of for that, saying we don't even hear that song. We paid all that money. I get tuppers for that one. But I'll also say that the big fear with it, if the conventional thinking is if you don't see the people who were murdered, if you aren't with them, then you have no emotional connection to them.
Yeah.
Right. That was what we were fighting. It's like, well, how will you care about who's killed? And I don't know what the right answer is. It's always going to be different for different films in different situations. But in our case, the sheer brutality of the act, I think, and the circumstances in themselves made you empathetic to them. You didn't need much more, at the end of the day.
No, also, if the show was about Anita Arora, then you would have probably invested in the parents, but it's not, right? So,
right.
I mean, it's also, the takeaway I feel is just holding back so much information, just generates so much curiosity. By not revealing anything, you don't reveal what they are talking, who they are. You don't reveal who is watching. You just hold back all information, and suddenly there is curiosity. It's very interesting.
And the audience starts doing that work for you. Then.
Yeah. And in fact, so I was talking to some friends recently, and one of them said that, was it intentional that you guys revealed that there was a woman involved in the gang at the very beginning? And I think my thing was that it's okay. I think it's a nice breadcrumb, like the Karishma shot of her smashing heads. I think it's an interesting breadcrumb. You either catch it or you don't. And then maybe you add it up later as you go on. So I think that particular intro, I think that was we spent a lot of time. I think we spent more time on that than the episode itself.
But one had a lot of we spent a lot of time on one with the details of one. I think one thing Antara had to establish was like a different. She had to do whatever it takes to make that episode work. Which if she has to change the language of the show a little bit, if we have to do kind of cutaways to illustrate what Farthika's talking about at some point, if we have to have a kind of musical approach that's more sweeping so it keeps you into it, like Antara had to solve very, very a lot of problems and very specific problems that that came very frequently. Especially in the first half of it. And that I'm glad that we had the freedom to, not be so dogmatically attached to saying, well, these are the rules of the edit. You can't change it. We had to make it work for that episode. And it's not like we kept doing that later on. It's not like, Varthika's, talking about who they're profiling in episode 2, we're cutting away and seeing the world, it was just, we needed it in one to create urgency. And I don't think, nobody's sitting here saying, "Oh, the cutting pattern is very uneven between episodes." As long as the moments are emotionally truthful while you're, and you stay in it, I think.
Yeah, and I think I had watched obviously 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. At that point, you guys were still working on. So at some point, I'd stopped watching. I remember one very late night, I sat up and watched all 5 in a flow, and I messaged all 3 of you and said, "Oh my God." Till that point, I didn't know. And I don't think even Manas and Parikshit were convinced about why I was so happy. But I said, I think this is really something. And the following day as well, the show really stayed with me. And I think, speaking for myself, I'm not very fond of watching something I've worked on immediately. I wait at least a year or 2 before I watch it, and I learn to appreciate it. But I really felt very differently about this show. But also, guys, Parikshit and Manas, so we spoke about what was challenging for us in episode 1. Can you tell us a little bit more about 2 and 4 and 3 and 5? What were your most challenging scenes? And for Tanuj, of course.
2.
Manas, why don't you?
2 se shuru karo. 2 se.
Chronology.
Oh God. So 2. It was. I feel the middle section of 2, the raids. The raids again. The challenge on the edit was how much to keep of it. Like that discrimination. The feeling. We knew that it had to be overwhelming. That this Chadda is just relentless, and he's kind of brainwashed even the cops. Like everybody is just relentless now. That feeling had to be convincing, right? So how much is enough? I think that I struggled with personally, and we had a lot of back and forth on that. We've tried so many variations of various durations to kind of get the right um, amount of that in that. So as a sequence, that was slightly challenging, I feel. Um
But sorry, Pariksha, just to butt in, I wanted to
yeah.
know that is it also like how much of the brutality, like how much to push that, was that a consideration as well?
uh,
Like this, how the
not
way they're
not
being roughed up and
that I think was done very cleverly in shoot. I don't think that was an editorial. I mean, of course, you kind of choose what to show and what not to show, but what you were showing was on the edge. It was not like, it was not as brutal as the hammer killing or anything like that.
Right.
It was enough to kind of make you convinced that okay, these people are being shoved around, pushed around, treated like dogs. That kind of feeling, I think, was achieved even in the choreography of it all. What I struggled with, I felt that there was too much of it at the beginning, right? And then to kind of just keep sculpting it and shaving off the extra bits and just coming to a point which is little. I mean, I still feel it is slightly longer, but it's still. I understand that it is important because it's going to drive that discrimination is going to drive so much of the story. So that, I think, that was a challenge for me in episode 2.
That's why I still
Yeah.
wish, the one scene where they get the backpack and the Mullins, and, the actual shot, Jairaj goes into the bag and pulls out books from the bag.
Yeah.
And there was one of those small beats that kind of, it creates more, cloud around what they're doing. I wish I kind of just, it's funny you say you wish it's long. I kind of wish we had some of those beats back in.
but why did you guys cut that out?
I feel that there was, the raid was had 3 stages already. So they arrived, they did 1 round, then they rounded people in, then they went for a 2nd round, and there was a 3rd round waiting at the police station. So there overall, no, it just felt too heavy. When you enjoy, like each moment itself works, and it's lovely. Like the choreography is almost like a oneer you can hold and you can enjoy that. But when you watch it in a flow, this is just, in the 37-minute episode, you're watching like 25 minutes of the same. I mean, it's not the same thing, but of a very similar beat. You've kind of got the point. I mean, even then, you're still pushing it. You're still pushing it to the edge that, have you got the point? Have you really got it now? Are you convinced that these people are discriminated against?
Yeah.
Only then will we leave it go. That was also a very conscious choice. And I mean, again, that also was arrived at after a lot of iterations, like everything else.
So in episode 3, I was going to say was that I had somewhat of a first world problem where I did not have to establish anything. Things were already established in 1 and 2. Characters were already introduced, and a problem of losing Jugnu and Azad at the end of 2 had already been, had already arisen. So it was more of a challenge of where do we go from here. So much so that even that wrong profiling is being done, the wrong people are being discriminated. Even that was hinted. Chadda had come into the picture already. So there were, challenges like, where is episode 3 supposed to go? And it's bang in the middle of the show. So, of course, the crime will be solved at the end of the day. But, what really happens here in the police station? So I think the first concept that Delhi Crime as a show in general sort of achieves at large is it being itself a police procedural. And I think episode 3 was designed a lot around the procedural aspect of things. We were so much in the police station, I started to feel that I was living in a police station after a point. And actually, I have to say that it's only when Jairaj would go somewhere to arrest someone, I would feel like, finally I see some light. I can breathe some air. But on a serious note, I was really enjoying investing in how things will now unfold for Neeti in episode 3. How how will she deal with her husband? How will she deal with this fuck up that she's become a part of? Was it her fault? Was it not her fault? We will never know. It's something that is a very gray area. And how does Vartika sort of negotiate with this mess, which is on the inside of the police station and the outside of the police station also? So interestingly, there was this inherent challenge within the narrative, which sort of took me and Tanuj on this journey. There used to be this one scene in episode 3 earlier, which in the new iteration sort of skipped that Neeti used to fire the constable who was caught. And I was I was extremely attracted to that scene because she was the one who lost the convict. She was the one who got reprimanded for it. And her punishment was that she was supposed to, fire someone that was not going to be was involved in leaking the footage to the news channels. So it was a very interesting journey within one episode for Neeti herself. This time around, of course, there was the entry of the lawyer and the Jugnu and Azad coming back, and they having an elaborate story of their own, and of course, which led to that beautiful moment, which is a highlight of the show. Also now of when Jairaj, sorry, not Jairaj, Bhupender drops off Jugnu and Azad into the lane. And I have to mention this. I was very kicked when Shefali recently in one of the interviews mentioned the print this moment, and it was in episode 3, and I was like, when I had seen that moment, even in the material, I was like, now this is a winner.
It's been all over Twitter, huh? This print, this has become a GIF, and it's all over.
Yeah. So
to her credit, it was a beautiful thing she had thought of in the moment, and in the moment she auditioned it for me, I was like, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that that sort of it also lands so beautifully because from the beginning of the episode where she is, it's almost like she's having a headache, to reaching a point in that press conference where like I'm taking matters into my own hands now, and I'm going to drive this investigation. That sort of turnaround that happens in Vartika's life in episode 3 is what made it so beautiful. And whatever struggles we had in sort of shaping this episode, I think it was always, all of that was worth it eventually.
Yeah. I'll say with 3 too, the big thing, the challenge was obviously to keep it moving. You're in the police station. How do we trim things? What do we get rid of? And then you had some beautiful restructuring actually towards the end too, from the original script, where instead of Chandni's call coming a little bit earlier, before Jugnu Azad were sort of revealed, you had this clever restructure where it came after, and it was such an emotionally aligned thought, because it just was a more impact. It was Vartika's moment. It was more impactful. You wanted to sort of feel that after you've known what's happening with Jugnu and Azad, and
Yes.
That was a nice move.
And also then basically going from this high of Vartika really knowing what she wants now, and taking that call that I'm going to release these wrongly convicted people, to going to the actual convicts. So that's the beauty of editing and narrative structuring on the edit table, right? Is that today it feels like what a natural organic flow to things, but we arrived at it on the edit table, and that was so much fun. Of at what point will this press conference happen, and what point will she piss off Adil Hussain, and at what point will we see Tilottama for the first time, it's almost, it's not a 5-minute journey in that, episode. It's almost like a 20-25 minute journey that you make to that particular scene.
Yeah, and this is exactly what I mean when I say that, I want to have this conversation, because we always see and we talk about largely the finished product, so to speak. But this journey to reach there is so hard for the director, for the editors, and for everyone, I think, who's dealing with material that's been shot. Once a shoot is done, I think the shoot you kind of get by on adrenaline and push your way through, and you just have to make things happen, regardless of everything.
Yeah, and it's worth stating, that Mithun and Rajesh and Sid and all of your assistants, these are the people that really hold the show together, get things done.
They drive the process.
Totally.
And especially, Mithun is such a strong post producer that he provides that squeeze that you need, and Vicky too. Vicky kept us on our timelines as well. And I think I just wanted to mention them because they do work that is it's impossible to do it without their work.
No, they are pretty much the spine of the project.
And in fact, so I just recorded an interview with Mithun yesterday. So his episode is going to come before this one. And this is exactly what I was telling him, that he's so critical. Also, does this so well, that he manages the director's expectations, the schedule, the editors constantly calling him and, hounding him for when is this going? When is that going? It's not easy. And he's so calm and composed.
Can I just say, like, this edit, the challenge was insane. We were supposed to do the first couple sessions in person. This was supposed to be set our tracks in person, and Omicron hit, and Mithun had to shift everything, and Rajesh had to shift everything and get editing machines in your room. We had to figure out how to do this online. I went crazy. That's exactly what I wanted to ask, Tanuj, because you, I think, got out of the shoot, came into the edit. I think did you sit with me for half a day or something? I know you were in the edit. You didn't. No.
But you were around. I think you just came and met us, I think, in the edit. Manas and Parikshit have no memory of that.
Party. No. You saw me at my birthday party where I passed out.
Yes. But that's about it. And I think Manas and Parikshit also I met once during the PPM, like when we initially spoke to Tanuj in the production office. We met in the edit.
We met at the edit, I think, the first schedule in January 2020, I think, when that material came in. But that was still like a few meetings, and then March, everything got disbanded.
And we never actually met till this whole process got over. And I think Manas, Parikshit and I met in between one time, but all of us have never met because Parikshit didn't turn up for the screening.
Yes.
But I feel like we actually all broke up into our individual conversations at some point. But that's because I think there was such a synergy between the three of you, and it's such a good conversation that you guys had built as well. That I felt like, I don't know how you, but I just never felt we needed to all meet as a team after a certain point. We kind of were all exchanging information very organically, and we were very aligned after a certain point.
But I'm pleasantly surprised at how that happened. Like when I was the finished series also. Again, there are three different editors at work, right? And there are three different minds at work. However, there is a sense of uniformity. I don't know. Uniformity is a very generalizing sort of word, but there is something that feels connected. There is a connectivity in all the episodes, and that is not conscious for sure. I didn't ask Manas or Antara, how much do you guys stay? Do you do overlaps? Do you do this? I didn't ask that, but it has happened. So I'm genuinely curious as to how that happened. Is it the
will-
material?
For
Yeah.
a change, I will give that benefit of doubt to Tanuj because he was the caretaker of
He
the
was
show.
Sure, yeah, of course.
I
Held it
put a
together.
little masala on every episode, but I think also you have to give a little bit of credit here, a lot of credit here to Kerry too, as well. His music,
Of course. Oh yeah.
another thing that really
Yeah.
the episodes and the conversations I had with Kerry too. You know, the ideas of how we would get into this like beautiful synth tone and when to use the emotional, how to bring out the emotion of this dark story, dark emotion of it. And then his obviously his rhythms, his beats, the kind of stuff you can cut, montages to.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're trying to get the music online too. It's
They must.
They must. It's a
job.
highlight of the show for
This
me, and
one-
it
Yeah.
was such a good
Yeah.
decision to give us the music early on. Like
Yeah.
first schedule, I think we had the
was
music,
good.
which is it changed the way I looked at the edit. It changed the way I looked at sequence. It's so important.
Yeah.
And I wish we had this on other projects also.
No, also,
So-
I think what helps is that even if, say, you have 50 tracks, of which you feel 20 work and 30 don't, that in itself is also making a
Sure.
decision and picking a route for everyone, all of us, and Kerry and Tanuj to function. And it was so helpful to have, as you said, it really helped us to pick the tone of the show, if not like individual episodes,
true.
to a great extent.
See, one thing I did know, I knew I wanted the music to evolve into that track "Loneliness." By the end, I wanted to really feature that feeling, and which Manas was absorbing. He probably heard me say this once a day for two years until he said, "Yo, we're doing this, and you don't have to remind me." But yeah, that track really, he just hit it out of the park. He's so good. He's so
very
good at like I would just talk to him. This is what I want to feel. These are the emotions of this story, and he's so good at translating that into music without very much. Sometimes you don't even know if Kerry's listening to. He's just kind of like taking your energy and
Yeah.
like, oh, this guy didn't hear a thing, and then like he sends tracks, and you're like.
No, but his level of comprehension
genius.
it's something else. His level of Tanuj, if you remember, when we in the first episode, when Anita Vartika tells her, don't look at your parents' faces, and she does that nevertheless. And we actually don't have a shot of showing. The most obvious thing is to cut to the bludgeoned face, and we don't have that. We just see that change. As direction, performance, camera, I love that shot because it says so much with so little. And there's no scream, there's no, overt expression. It's a very subtle change in expression. And also, I remember that after we had done one pass on the BGM, something there I was feeling was not quite enhancing the moment. And then we had Kerry on the mail, and we said just some sort of a sting. And then when he sent it back, it was exactly what I think we were looking for.
He's notorious for that.
That's insane. I've never seen that with.
He's so precise with adjustment. Like his adjustment game is like his first drafts are great, but his adjustment game is like it puts him in another category.
Yeah.
Especially for us, we have to turn things around quickly. You don't have a lot of time to figure this stuff out. He does it quickly too. Man, that guy.
This particular collaboration with Kerry as the musician of the project is one of the most special experiences that I've ever had during an edit. And kudos to you for taking that call of making these themes before we even started editing.
Yeah.
And of course, Kerry delivering it, because it was inspiring stuff, man. When it. And it's not always, all three of us use music very differently on our edits. And I can speak for myself. My music always comes after my cut is done. I'm very, I'm a big miser when when it comes to using BGM. But the kind of stuff that he was giving me, there were times where even before cutting a scene, just while watching the rushes, I used to listen to his tracks just to, feel something that Carrie is feeling. And I to think in episode 3 and 5, I never had any conversation with Carrie about, sort of enhancing anything. Of course, in 5, there was a need of more music on many occasions, and Tanu sort of filled those gaps with him later on. But it was very special. I also wanted to say what we were discussing, how when lockdown hit, obviously, this dark cloud of anxiety hit all of us globally, right? And initially, I was not sure if this is the right time for me to be editing a crime drama. Like,
Yeah.
it's dark and intense. But it was just so delicious, the material to work on, that whatever we were doing, and I think it was also, now in retrospect, I can definitely say that it was also the process, that there were deadlines, there were timelines, there were expectations, but there was still a lot of freedom, which was, I think I have to give you credit, Tanuj, for that you allowed us to function in a way where I could opine, I could uh, opinionate even on the edit timeline. I could show you options, and that journey that we made through this, through these multiple lockdowns and multiple iterations of all the episodes. I think that has obviously helped us reach where we have today, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, one of the things is, you want to surround yourself with. I remember Ryan Coogler said this, like, if you're this if you're the smartest person in the room, that's the bad sign. You want to be surrounded by a tremendous talent, and Carrie's an example of that. All three of you are examples of that. We don't win unless you guys are firing at your best. So part of my job is to guide the show this is where the story is going, this is where it isn't. But if I'm not enabling your talent, if your talent isn't leading, then why do we have editors then? You need more perspective on the material than what I've applied in the directing and as we with the writers, the conception part of it. And I think speaking to this, doing this in the pandemic, what I'm really proud of the show is how much it's such a foggy time. It was such a it still is such a confusing time. Yet this show has so much sharpness, there's so much clarity. It's such a strong voice, even in the shoot. And what surprised me so much is the themes of the show, which felt theoretical at first, which felt like a way to service the material, actually reflect what people are feeling now. I think this anxiety you're talking about, it's really expressed through Karishma, this aspirational, this frustration with the aspirational life. I think, I don't know how it happened, but as Delhi Crime 1, the themes are relevant when it came out, for its moment. Somehow this has become very reflective of what we're all going through. Maybe it's metaphorically, allegorically, tonally. And that's been a surprise in the response for me, that it's especially with young people, with a sort of a younger audience as well.
Parikshit, I wanted you to talk about episode 4 now.
Yeah.
The challenge, I think the challenging portion in 4, the sequence I love, is of course Karishma's beauty parlor thing. Absolutely love it. Like the way it's shot, the way it's performed, everything, love it. But that was a joy. Like there was a joy to it. The challenge, I think, was the chase. When Bhupender and Jairaj kind of chased Guddu to the garage, editorially that was a challenge to kind of link geography. Technically I'm speaking, it's not a great discovery that I had on the edit or something. It's just technically, so that geography is clear. When somebody is saying left, you show a left. But because the footage was not as clear, because it was shot on the streets of Delhi. That itself is an achievement. So to kind of link everything was a bit of a challenge, and that took a big shout out to Kalyan, who was my associate, who really kind of mapped it all out. Then I could kind of do pacing and linking everything properly. And also
but also you also had to integrate things like Guddu going to the bathroom on the side of the road. graphic of showing like a map of their distance. Like there's a lot of integration of beats.
Yeah, but it seems very technical and simple, but it took a little bit of. I mean, again, it took a lot of iterations, I guess, to kind of what ADR to introduce, when to bring in the graphics so that geography is clear, all that. It's again now it looks simple, but while we were doing it was very dense. It really took time to kind of see through all the material and kind of make it clear, because in those sequences, editorially the geography and all has, at that point you don't want people confused. He was going left, why is he going right? All that simple stuff is the biggest kind of obstruction. So you make it simple, then the story takes over. So that took a little bit of doing. But the rest of it, the fourth, and also the end. The end, we had so much discussion on when to end fourth and when to begin fifth. I think that was. I think eventually, the call that was taken was right only. But we did try a few things. Even in the end of the current end of fourth, how much tension and how much to draw out that tension, because again, that the old couple which is who are going to die, supposedly going to die, that tension could be stretched. It could be double the length of what it is right now, and at some point it was. So again, to arrive at that, this is the right and this is the right amount, and we get out now. I feel that also was an interesting challenge, and it was a challenge.
I have to say that ending is really, and after thinking of all our discussions, it's a very hair-raising, tense ending, actually. And one thing that happens, we work on this material, we get desensitized to actually how scary this stuff is. We're looking at prosthetics.
Yeah, true.
Like we see the before and after the heads and tails of takes, so we know what's keeps coming back to me as feedback is how gripping and scary the show is. And that scene in particular, I don't think there's a wrong answer when you decide where to end we could make it work the other way too if we just put our minds to it and work hard. We had the kind of material and story where you could go either way, but I'm really glad we just made a choice, because Carrie's music too in that was the one outlier as well. It's this very like hair-raising, like this tone,
True.
And I wanted to. We never speak on that end episode 4 ending. We had some kind of like maybe shame around it because we were told to go ways with it, but it was. It's a very good ending. It's very arresting.
Actually, in retrospect, now that everything has worked, and one can be kinder in retrospect, I do feel that for that episode, that is the right ending, because that episode has promised you only thrill and pace. So at that point, bringing in a very emotional beat maybe would have felt alien. Of course, you're right. We could have made it work. It would have worked. All that is right. But for that, if you view that episode in isolation, that is the right ending. It has promised you thrill. It has given you thrill. So
also, it's one can also phrase it the same way. Now that what initially we were talking about, how it's a tonal shift in 4 and 5. The sudden burst in energy that happens in 4 always never felt out of place. And also, I was going to say that because all three of us were working in isolation on our own episodes, and for long periods we were not privy to what's happening in his episode, what is happening in my episode. I always remembered that 4 is more about Bhupender getting shot, and for me, that is a big highlight moment of the story. So for me, that itself, I'm saying this in context of how you get sort of desensitized about your own material, right? I was always very sensitive because it was not my episode. So I knew that it will work, and even when we came to that situation where Parikshit and I were suddenly those classmates where we were suddenly asked to share our tiffin together, and we didn't know if we wanted to do that or not. But I was like, okay, let me taste yours. Right. So when I saw that, I was like, bro, this is working. Don't overthink it. And he had many kind things to say for my stuff as well. So that, I think that interaction definitely helped us sort of remove this fogginess over the ending of the episodes, I feel. And just, I think that sequence in the building with her, and especially using those B-roll shots of the under
Yeah.
construction buildings. It
Yeah.
that is
The-
editing gold. What Parikshit has created there in this
Yeah.
That
show.
is
That's
something else.
editing
That is
gold.
something else.
I
Yeah.
will say
Yeah.
the magic in that. I remember this edit was like even when it first came in, everyone was blown away. Even execs, everyone was like very excited about that scene. And then we pushed for more though because that
Yes.
shot of her cutaway, her POV of the man, wiping the
Yeah.
stairs and doing this work, and the themes that came out because of that cutaway, it took the scene to a way
To a
bigger.
whole new level. Yeah. Yeah.
It had a purpose, and that was a late addition to it. Actually, we weren't even. And Parikshit's computer brain remembered this. He was like, no, there's one. So we're like, what is she looking at? We need to, we're trying to figure out. She's looking out the window. Maybe we need a POV. Maybe there's a dog on the street. Maybe there's a cop car. We didn't know. And he somehow, he's like, I know there's one shot somewhere in the B-roll of a thing back, like of a thing we shot in the early. And he, the way you dug that for that.
No, I feel that is again. I mean, I don't want to. I am really proud of that move, and I'm also very happy about how we arrived at it. I mean, that was a really collaborative, like genuinely collaborative way of arriving at it. We were discussing themes, discussing that this is a big moment for the show. Like we all knew it when we saw the footage. I think when you wrote it, when she performed it, when it was shot, we knew it was a big moment. Right?
Yeah.
How to enhance that? That is, that's such a good place to be in the first place. Instead of saving something, but it should not embarrass anybody. You are now thinking about how to take it to the next level. I mean,
even the cool this one moment that we added a little sound effect for the took a little bit of liberty, the dreamlike quality in it that. You don't. That's harder to get across the line generally. And I love
also I have to say that the timing of it, because there was so much discussion amongst the four of us at least about how much to show off Karishma, over these many episodes, and how early, how late are we doing enough? Are we not doing enough? Etc. Etc. So of course. Sometimes you have a great scene, but if it's ill-timed, then it can also hamper the flow of things. So all in an episode that was moving at such a crazy space, to be able to find the time of where Thermal and him are having a conversation, then she goes into her own independent space. That I felt was very, very well crafted.
And also not to mention the quiet moments of it all too. This is one thing David and I talked about a lot is finding quiet moments for everybody. There's so much scripting, so much talking. Sometimes TV can just turn, web series can turn into line. And how do we wanted to make sure we had quiet moments, not just for Karishma, but for all of our characters, whether they're used, how they're used, it's a choices in the edit. But
correct.
I mean, just drawing from that, even in in the fourth episode, although it has pace in the latter half of the thing, the first half actually are two big moments. One is this Karishma moment and how Neeti figures out Rasa Beauty Parlor. Again, that is shot in a very, the material was a very quiet sort of material. Like she's just looking at the board and trying to figure out what the fuck have I done? How do I fix it? To kind of create mix match stuff and kind of create something out of that is also, I mean, again, that is not a very pacey sort of moment. It's again a very quiet thinking, like a cop thinking and kind of cracking something. I think that was also, it's paced. I love 4 because it has so much, it's such a great graph. It kind of picks up and then kind of runs, which is great. I mean, the way it was written and imagined.
You're following up 3 too, so that 3 is such a heavy emotional land. Like unless 4 can just thrill you, it's a very hard. It's a very different. We're lucky that the next episode became so. It felt like a step forward. It was a lot of gravity in 3.
Additionally, for the longest period of the editing process, I was cribbing about how every other B-roll shot that I used to take up, someone would raise their hand and tell me that
this is Manas. During the screening, Manas is nudging me during the screening and saying, you took all my B-roll shots, because episode 1 is it's full of B-roll, because I did intercuts and then we had this and that and moving through traffic, all of that. Yes,
And it's amazing
guilty.
how just assumed they were mine because she was the one who started the show. So
No,
she had every right to pick whatever she wanted
with our show, Antara has first choice.
on
We say if you don't
everything.
get past episode 1, we don't get to. So
So
she has the priority.
the way these two have championed the use of B-roll, my God. एक तो, of course, the quality of B-roll this
Yeah,
time is
that's the thing.
also,
We
both you
fought for
and
that.
David did a phenomenal job on it. But even in, like, I can never forget that big wide shot of cars going and there's a security guard almost dozing off.
Yeah.
Just to be, and I've seen that shot, how long that shot is. To extract that particular moment from that shot, Parikshit, matlab, mind blowing. I was just,
But
this
it
is
is
a true
actually
editor, bro.
the quality of B-roll is so good. I watched like B-roll properly, which is why I had visual memory of these things because it was so enjoyable. Actually, the I think this was the second batch of B-roll. This outstanding. I mean,
We put a lot
whoever
of
went out really put in like thought and effort into it.
We created a 2-day schedule for the B-roll and all of those things. It wasn't like we just put the camera on the road and was shooting randomly. Like we knew exactly how to move from point to point to point to point in the market. We had permissions from every single person of how to move through. It was, for footage that feels so natural, the amount of structure and planning we put in to get that is you'd be like, how this feels like just a paint by numbers like it's a treasure hunt, it wasn't. It was a very designed because you want to see Delhi. Delhi is a character. If you don't show the city and quintessential, if you don't really land the faces, the people, the characters of the city, you're missing opportunity with this show.
Also, I think in the time that you've recorded, I think it was just the second round of B-roll that you did just after the first wave. And that sense of gloom is so evident. It kind of seeps through the footage. And I feel like it's just in the way people are walking, the body language. It's not, normal in a sense. And that
It's
just
not
elevates.
like
Yeah.
people are tired or people are exhausted.
People are tired. Yeah. You're kind of feeling the weight of the world.
Another secret with our B-roll is actually we actually pulled out the tripod quite a bit on the B-roll. That's a big secret. If you've gotten this far in the podcast and you're a Delhi Crime super fan, the secret is in the tripod. Actually, we were able to really nail our moments and be inobtrusive just by we have our tricks. We are able to put it on the camera and everybody's looking one way, but we're shooting behind us. So you get that naturalism. So there are tripod shots in this show.
No, and it's so interesting because generally otherwise the B-roll is generally hand-end guerrilla stuff, and this is just the opposite, right? Our actual narrative stuff is on the go, and this is like, look at this, watch this. Very interesting. It's an interesting choice.
Yeah, but Manas, circling back again to episode 5 now. What was challenging for you?
So episode 5 was.
I know what wasn't challenging. I know what wasn't challenging, and that was the most, I think, the iconic scene between Karishma and Vartika. I remember you guys saying that you kind of got it right pretty much immediately between the two of you. So I know that wasn't the challenging part.
No, I mean that and a lot of credit for that scene getting right in the first go goes to both Tilottama and Shefali. I mean, they were just so on point, and I don't even think there weren't many retakes also of that scene. It just pretty much sort of landed on its own. That scene, and a personal favorite of mine, the Niti Devender fight in the house.
So beautifully done. Beautifully done.
Those are actually two one-ers which have been sort of cut to create a scene, but both of them very close to my heart. From day one, I sort of just knew what I wanted to do with those scenes. So that is something that was not that difficult, I would say.
Sorry, can I just ask? Sorry, Manas. I just wanted to ask, because you said like there wasn't a lot of footage for the face-off. Did you guys have a lot of options in terms of magnifications, or because you guys have pretty much stayed with those big close-ups, and I think you just once or twice maybe you see the too short and you see the back of the vehicle.
But I'll jump in on this because I'll tell you, we were supposed to shoot that scene on the roof where she gets caught, but right when we finished, the gun, Warthika holding the gun to Krishna, it started raining crazy in the alley. So we actually had we were running out of time and options. So you have to use all those independent filmmaker tricks. The only place you could be safe to shoot this was inside of the car, the police car, which ended up working out perfectly because they have, it's a great bookend for this episode 1 where they're in the police car. And part of it is time running out. We had to get both sides, but the actors were very hot. They were hot right away. And it was, you just know you don't need, it wasn't a time issue. I just knew I didn't need much more. And I think in those Jeeps, you can't get much, you only have one shot. There's no magnification. Your master is out the windows, the 2, which we barely stayed in, so I had limited options at that point, but the idea was to focus on the actors at that, they're bringing it home, not any.
Now is the time when you want to listen to Karishma. You want to know why she did. So it actually, by the mere function of how Tanuj might have arrived at it, I think it was the simplicity is what was required at that time, and I think that is how we sort of ended up landing on it also. I think episode 5, the biggest challenge was. First, for me, I was nervous that it is the finale. So it has to have the finale quality to it. Season 2 ends in this episode. So, it has to feel well earned. All closure beats have to come together. Criminal has to be caught. Theme has to sort of round itself up. It all has to now finally make sense, basically. So that for any show, the finale episode is always sort of stressful in the making aspect of it. I think our biggest challenge was that is one episode where less is more was not happening. We had just so much material to work with, so much written and short material to work with for that episode, that navigating the screenplay of that episode became our biggest challenge. And it did take some doing for us to arrive at it. Should we say, for example, should we still be procedural, or are we done with that? Are we, the audience is tuned in? Do we go all thriller mode, like, let's take bigger leaps and, arrive at this. But then suddenly it becomes convenient filmmaking. We are not, reaching the standards that we've set ourselves in the first 4 episodes. So a lot of these, cross-questioning yourself, introspection, etc., that helped us arrive. And which is where I think this conversation of how we are going to end 4 and how we are going to begin 5 also sprouted from. And when we gained some clarity on what we are doing with 4, is when I sort of started pushing the agenda of, being very clear of how I wanted to start episode 5. And very quickly, me and Tanuj were on board with that there were actually multiple beginnings of episode 5, and there were the title could have come on multiple positions also. But I was very clear that now it's episode 5. I don't want to spend too much time on another robbery of theirs or another killing of theirs. And luckily, the robbery that came to me in episode 5, it was a failure. So that sort of set itself up for this mega showdown that Karishma has with the 2 of them and ends up killing her gang members. So I very clearly wanted to establish it right at the beginning and move ahead. From there, of course, the title, sort of helps you create that distinction, because then, it again, as Parikshit said, like now it all feels very simple and very, organic. But I was like, Bhupender has been shot. People want to know what is happening with Bhupender. And here, Karishma is also struggling, and Vartika is also panicking. And my God, how do we, should we do split screen and show everything together? so so we had almost two extra scenes of every beat that we ended up keeping, and there was a big block of procedural beat which we went over and over and over again. And I actually, Tanuj then finally one day just took the call and he just chopped it off. And I was like, I took a big gasp. I was like, this is 2 years worth of work which you're removing. He's like, I don't want it. I have to tell you, after 2 years and 3 months, I have never liked this.
What had happened, just to jump in, what had happened was I think we had found way more traction with the gang. And a lot of that procedure was was to kind of give the gang character. You're seeing what they pulled out bags from Karishma's house, and you sort of see how she dresses, or you go to Bablu's mom's house. All these things that fill in who the gang are. The moment you start jumping into the gang's perspective, and we kind of filled that out a lot more later on, you realize that these beats are now late. They're not needed. You already know who people are. You don't need to know what was in Karishma's closet. You've spent time hearing her. You've seen her in the salon looking for what she wants. You've seen her arguing with her gang members. So those beats became a little bit unnecessary, I felt.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah. So
I
mean, so it was almost like I was busy creating that, and then it's actually later on into the process we had even spoke about this. I realized that he was coming with a certain energy from episode 4, and I hadn't seen it by then. So I was still navigating, and then he just brought in that perspective that I've said this already in 4, so we can move ahead. First half of episode 5, I would say that that for us was the biggest challenge of making sense of it was not an issue. It just how much of what we want to say in the best, most efficient way possible. And then Ribha and Bhupender's scene in the hospital, these are all like, these are beats that have been sort of lingering throughout the show. So then they have to come to a closure. It used to be much later into the episode. I decided to pull it up because I was like, once Vartika leaves the police station, she's not going to come back. She actually doesn't come back almost until she's ready to arrest Lata. Actually, she's not Karishma, she's Lata.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think both of us sort of discovered that on the edit together, that actually she's left for Ghaziabad, and now she's in the field herself, Vartika, for the first time in the show. So I don't think we have the power to stop this energy anymore. So we should we almost use the Riba and Bhupender scene as like a chapter marker between two big events, almost like that. And it sort of fell into place very correctly for us. And then we went to Ghaziabad, and from there on, things sort of, it's almost like, things sort of went onto autopilot mode, and we ended up arresting her eventually. So it's these small and big struggles, I think, where you sort of how you arrive at something, and that sort of helps you sort the next 40 minutes of the story.
Episode 5 was really a process of removal, right? It was about taking things out. Taking things out was the edit, and then it was big set piece scenes, killing Karishma, Niti Devinder fight, this conversation with Vartika, Karishma, and then it was about, okay, we don't need this. We kept removing, and then there were some beautiful inventions Manas did, just being able to go, okay, after we took it out, we needed that beat of Vartika coming back to the gang house, and coming out, and he's talking to the neighbors, and she gets this call that they have a different lead on Karishma. Subhash calls her, right? And that was that scene was completely different before. We had way more. It was a mela
and everything.
first.
Yes.
And then Manas, this beautiful invention of this phone call. It's amazing how when your back's against the wall, how you can repurpose footage and how you can rewrite a phone call to make it work. And it was a beautiful invention that in some ways saved the show, some ways saved the episode. And I wanted to actually, that was a champion editorial moment, Mana. So we Sid and I were like, what? And that actually. That actually opened up the field to cut out the rest of it. That's how I knew I could just leap forward to the Ghaziabad chase because we had made the link, and the focus of the episode became, instead of it being about the police procedure, which at that point you just need to know that they've got Karishma, and more into Karishma's zone a little bit more. You're already hooked on her. You're already attached to her. You're dealing with what do we have to work with her. Coming out of the apartment, she just became the more compelling thing to chase at the moment, And we were going to get back to Vartika by the end of the episode. We were going to get the rest of the characters eventually. So that became the solve, And I didn't realize it. I was just realizing for the first time that my access to the story was completely different than yours coming into episode 5. Because I was, looking at 1 through 4, and I'm just realizing how many of our conversations were probably colored by that simple lack of
they were. But then that also, as I was saying, that also brought in some amount of objectivity to the situation, reflecting on each other's creation like that. One thing that as we were discussing along the way, there was one thing that it's not about easy or difficult, but I was very excited about tracking on how you approach similar sequences in different ways. Is that so Tanuj had many sit-down conversations of Vartikas with different characters. So say for in episode 3, there is a conversation between her and the lawyer when he's trying to explain to him that, explain to her that DNTs are not supposed to be targeted. Then there is a conversation between her and this girl who's Sapna. So that's also, so that we are close up, wide, close up. That's one nature of a conversation. Then in episode 5, there's a hospital conversation between Vartika and Bhupender, where you're now inching towards actual realization. And then it's one of the most unassuming scenes of the whole show, but it's very, very special because I totally redesigned how it was written and how it was sort of originally supposed to be. It's this small conversation between Vartika and this restaurant owner just before they go to Subhash Nagar to arrest Karishma. I was always mapping. Again, in my world, there is only episode 3 and episode 5. Like, there is nothing else. So I was like, Vartika is making this journey from episode 3, meeting the lawyer, to this guy. Is that when that restaurant owner comes, the way I started that scene straight away, he's saying, why am I here? She shows him the photograph. She's like, do you know her? What do you know? She's like, she is in no mood to listen to him. She's like, just give me answers and fuck off from here. And and the other conversations where there was great sort of, there were pauses, there were beats, she would ponder. By this, she's reduced it all. This is like, now just give me the answers that I want, and I want to get it. So that's a very unassuming scene, but it just excited me so much that, how you make a journey of a character and you edit different conversations in different ways, which sort of, then we were ready for a launch pad of this, big drone moment of Subhash Nagar and this, what I've always called it being a Singham moment of, all these ambassadors arriving into Subhash Nagar. Totally having fun on the police drama and thrill aspect of it.
Yeah, and what I enjoyed, I think, the most about the fifth episode is that it brought me personally, because I had worked on the first, it brought me right back to the mood of the first shot of the first episode, which is Vartika. I think the second shot actually, which is Vartika in a car, her car, just looking despondent and
Mhm.
moving. And I remember this is something that I think at some point we were kind of trying to determine where we are with the show and what are we trying to say and where is Vartika in the course of this. And remember, Tanvit said something very interesting, that it's like she's, and this was also with reference to the face off, the final face off, that it's like looking into darkness. And she's caught the perpetrator, but there's no respite, because this is a sort of a never ending cycle, and she's just kind of realizing that there's a vicious circle. There's no end to crime. And that's sort of the starting point of the first episode. So I like that the whole series kind of, for me, kind of came full circle in a sense.
Season one had such a strong moral compass to it, and it was important not to do the same thing, as well, and not to show. To me, it was important not to show capturing criminals necessarily as a pure win. Like, there's a sadness to it as well. There's a sadness that this happened in the first place, and I think that's something I wanted to honor and shift, from season one, where it was such a victory. It's like Empire Strikes Back. It's the darker one.
Yeah. Yeah. So, no, really. And I think it's been just having these conversations on across these last, I think, 2.5 years, 3 years, on mail and phone calls, and kind of going through this whole process of remote working, and yet all of us being, or at least attempting to be, on the same page as much as possible, has been a really interesting workflow, and quite a revelation that a show of this scale can actually, function, and we can make something
Yeah.
as solid as DC2, despite and in spite of all the trials and tribulations. But thank you so much. I'm going to end this session with a big thank you to all of you. And it's been such a privilege. And I always say this to everyone I meet, and I talk about this team in particular. It's been wonderful working with each and everyone, three of you, of course. And I think the associates we had, the assistants, the post team, they've been absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, I will echo that. You guys never gave up on the show, despite long stretches and pandemics. You never gave up on the show.
Thank you so much for your time, all three of you. This has been really, really wonderful. And I think I think giving me at least some sort of closure to the series and to this process. So thank you.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this video, then please like it, share it, comment on it, and subscribe to this channel so you're tuned in for our upcoming episodes.